What is King David going to say to Uriah the Hittite when they meet in heaven? I would like to be a fly on the wall for that one. Who's going to speak first? Is Uriah going to come up to him and be like, hey, man, what's up with murdering me and stealing my wife? Or is David going to say, hey, buddy, I really screwed up there, but hey, it worked out pretty well, huh? If you are not familiar with the story, you can find it in 2 Samuel, where David, who's chilling out at home during one of the wars, he's hanging out at the palace, and he starts looking around, and he sees Bathsheba taking a bath on the roof. The Bible says, one evening David got up from his bed and strolled around on the roof of the palace. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, a very beautiful woman. So David sent and inquired about the woman and was told, this is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Well, this begs a couple of questions. Why is the king at home during a war? And what is he doing getting out of bed in the evening? Mr. Lazy Pants. So he sees her bathing over there and he says, ooh, who is that? So he sends somebody over to go check out the situation. Finds out that she is married to Uriah the Hittite, one of the men fighting in the war that he's taking a vacation from. So he decides to bring her over and commit adultery with her. After that, she comes back to him and says, hey, King David, I'm pregnant. Uh-oh. So David sends a message to Joab, his general, who's fighting the war. And he says, hey, send Uriah home. I want to talk to him. So Uriah comes home, and David says, hey, Uriah, how's everything going? How's the war? And by the way, go cheer up your wife. Well, custom of the day, Uriah said, I cannot go and see my wife while all the other men are fighting the war. So he stays outside the palace with all the other servants, and he does not go see his wife. Because David is trying to cover up his sin by making this guy go spend a night with his wife, and then all of a sudden this pregnancy just so happens to come about because he came home during the war. But since this guy will not see his wife and has honor and integrity during this moment, he sleeps with the servants. So, round 2, David brings him back and he says, hey, party with me. So they get drunk, and he says, all right, now that you're nice and drunk, go see your wife. But Uriah was not persuaded by the booze and ended up spending the night with his master's servants, which means he did not go home and sleep with his wife. So, the next morning, David decides to write a letter to the general, Joab. And he sends this letter with Uriah. Do you guys know what the letter says? The letter says, put Uriah at the front of the fiercest battle, then withdraw from him so that he may be struck down and killed. David couldn't get Uriah to sleep with his wife, so decides to have the man murdered by his own hand. The guy is so honorable, he will not sleep with his wife because all the other men are deprived of their wives fighting in the battle, which makes David look even worse. Not only that, he sends Uriah back to the battle with a letter in his hand that's going to get him killed. Essentially, what's going to happen is Uriah is going to be fighting during a battle, and one of the commanders is going to tell all the other men to withdraw, and then he's going to get surrounded by enemies and killed, which is exactly what happens. So, After the death of Uriah, David takes Bathsheba as a wife, again, to try to cover up the pregnancy. If they do it really fast, then he can claim, okay, well, she's my wife now, and now we're having a baby. But Nathan the prophet comes in, and he tells David a little story. Then the Lord sent Nathan to David, and when he arrived, he said, "There were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a great number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one small ewe lamb that he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food and drank from his cup. It slept in his arms and was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, who refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest." David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. Because he has done this thing and hath shown no pity, he must pay for the lamb 4 times over." Then Nathan said to David, "You are that man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel and delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you the house of Israel and Judah, and if that was not enough, I would have given you even more." So basically, Nathan is telling David, God knows what's going on, obviously, even though he's trying to cover it up. And God even says, I would have given you all that you had desired, even more. And this is how you're treating me. Sleeping with your neighbor's wife, ignoring my commandments, and having the guy murdered. Ouch. That's gonna be an awkward moment when those two see each other in heaven.